Welcome to www.happynumbers.org. Today's lesson is we're still working on polynomials, and today we're going to looking at subtracting monomials. Monomials is a polynomial that only has one term in it. Okay, but I want to do some review first off. A polynomial is a series of algebraic terms usually connected by positive or minus sign. So a polynomial is a series of algebraic terms that are connected by a positive or negative sign. Now let's take a look at the vocabulary word term. A term is an algebraic expression that usually has a coefficient like 9, a variable x, and an exponent. And it could have 3x, y, z to the third. It's a coefficient. These are the variables. That's the exponent. And in a term, as we know, this is the coefficient. And this whole other part is called the variable part. Good. And keep in mind that a algebraic term could be that's a term. It has a coefficient because 1 is here, the 1 is understood, and it has an exponent, which is 1. This is y to the first power, but the 1's are not written. But this is a term, and also keep in mind this is an algebraic term also. It has a coefficient, it has an exponent, the exponent is 1, that's understood. It does not have a variable, but it's not necessarily to always have the variable. Okay, so that's the vocabulary we're working with. And then the other thing is polynomials. There are three kinds of polynomials we're looking at. One is monomials, and that's one term. Whoops, my bad. Then we looked at binomials, and that's two terms. And then we have trinomials, and those are three terms. Good. Okay, so now, today, that's our vocabulary, and that's important to know, and if you need to review that, you can go back and look at lessons that will review that. But today we're talking about subtraction of monomials. Now, to subtract monomials, we subtract the coefficient of like terms, and then we use the variable part. Okay, let's take a look. Well, let's take 5y minus 9y. Now, we're subtracting. Well, first of all, these two terms are like terms because their variable parts are the same. This is their variable parts, and they're the same. So we can subtract them. But remember, when we're subtracting numbers that have signs, we change the sign of the bottom number and we add. If you remember from our work with integers, that's how we subtract. So the positive 5 becomes negative 5, and it becomes addition. And when we combine positive 5 and negative 9, we get negative 4. Good. Let's take a look at this problem. Let's take negative x squared minus negative 3x squared. Well, okay, let's rewrite the problem. Negative x squared. Let me erase this just so it's out of our way. Negative x squared minus negative 3x squared. So all I've done is rewrite the problem in a vertical way. Well, these are like terms because their variable parts are the same. So I can subtract the coefficients. Remember, the coefficient 1 is here, although it's not written. There really is a 1 here. Well, if I'm subtracting, then I have to change the sign of the bottom number, and I add. So now I have a negative 1x squared plus a positive 3x squared would give me a positive 2x squared. And that's all there is to the subtraction of monomials. So what I'm going to do is put a couple of problems up here for you and let you work them, and then we'll take a look at them. So let's try this. Whoops. Okay, that's your first one. Then let's try this. This is 8x minus a negative 3x, and let's try this one. This will be your third one. Negative 6w minus negative 7w. Okay, there are your three problems. So go ahead and put your video or DVD on pause, work those, and then turn it back on again and we'll take a look. Okay, we have two like terms here because their variable parts are the same, so we can subtract them. Remember, this is a 1y. Don't forget that. Okay. Well, if we're going to subtract, then we change the sign. So this is a positive 1y. So we make this a negative 1y, and we add. Well, positive 7y, negative 1y gives us 6y. And that is our solution. Let's come over here. We have like terms because the variable parts are the same, so I can subtract them. Now, if I'm going to subtract, I change the sign of the bottom number, so the negative becomes a positive, and I add. And so now I have 8x plus 3x, which would give me 11x. Excellent. Here, I have a negative 6w and a negative 7w. These are like terms, their variable parts are the same. So I can combine them. Well, if I'm going to subtract them, I change the sign of the bottom number, make it an addition problem. Negative 6w, positive 7w gives me w, or 1w, but I don't have to write the 1. Excellent. By the way, if you are confused about when you're subtracting and changing the sign of the bottom number, take a look at the videos on integers that talk about subtracting signed numbers or subtracting integers. And that might be helpful in refreshing your skills. Okay, well, let's take a look at a couple of other problems here. Let's take this. 5 times x to the second power y minus negative 2 x to the second power y. Let's take a look at that problem. And let's take a look at this one. 3a to the second power b to the second power and 4a to the second power b to the second power, and we're going to subtract those two. All right, so there's two problems for you. Put your DVD or video on pause, work those problems, and turn it back on again. Good. Well, first thing we want to know are these like terms, and yes, they are like terms because their variable parts are the same, so we can subtract them. And we know when we subtract, we change the sign of the bottom number and we make the problem addition. So now we have 5x squared y plus 2x squared y, which would give us 7x squared y. Here, our two variable parts are the same, so we can subtract them. So we change the sign of the bottom. This is a positive 4. We make that a negative 4, and we make this an addition problem. We subtract the coefficients. We have a positive 3, negative 4 will give me 1. And then I use the variable part. And I don't have to write the 1 because it's understood. Good. Well, let's take a look at just one other kind of situation when we're adding monomials. Remember, we can only subtract the coefficients of like terms. So if I had a problem like this, a minus b, well, these are not like terms because their variable parts are not the same. Remember, there is a 1 and a 1 here. We don't write it. And there is a exponent here too, a 1 and a 1, but we don't write those. So we know this is 1a minus 1b. Well, the only thing we can do is when you're subtracting sign numbers, you change the sign of the second number and you add. So now 1a minus 1b becomes a minus b. That's the only thing we can do. That's the only thing we can do. Let's take another example. Negative 5cd minus positive 8c squared d. Okay, we're going to subtract those. Well, the variable parts are different, so we cannot subtract the coefficients. But what we have to do is change the sign of the bottom number and make it an addition problem. So the solution to this kind of a problem is negative 5cd minus 8c squared d. Again, we cannot combine these parts because the variable parts are different, so we cannot do anything to the coefficients. We cannot do anything to the coefficients. Let me give you one problem there to see that you... Actually, I'll give you two. All right, let's take a look at a problem like this. 6r squared s minus... Oops, my time is up. But I want to finish this because it's important. 6r squared s minus a negative 2r s squared. Well, we'll do it together since we've run out of time. Well, I can say to... Well, this does not look like a very good r, does it? I cannot combine, or I cannot subtract these monomials because their variable parts are different. This is r to the second power s, and this is r s to the second power. So all I can do, since this is a subtraction problem, is change the sign of the bottom number, make it an addition. And so the solution is 6r to the second power s, that's this one here, plus 2r s to the second power. Well, okay, that's it for subtracting monomials. Fairly simple. It's just like addition, that we can subtract the coefficients of like terms only, and then we use the like variable part. Of course, the thing here is in subtraction, we have to remember, let's have negative 4y minus 3y. We have to remember, since it's a subtraction of sign numbers, we change the sign of the bottom number. This becomes negative, and we make it an addition problem, so the answer is negative 7y. Very good. Thank you very much for your attention, and see you next time.